You're a very unselfish player. You're always serving the song. You're always serving the music.
I'm so glad you hear that, because I try to do that, you know, the best I can, and I think it's the best way to improvise. If you get adopted, you shouldn't see your real dad. You know, that's what Shrinks were saying.
Yeah.
I was studying with Pat Metheny at Berkeley a little bit. He was there, and he got a call from bobbycolomby, who was the founding father of Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and the original drummer. I got an audition with them. I remember at the end of it, we were singing White Room at the end of it, and we looked around, the bar had been packed when we got there, and no one was there. We were making so much fucking noise.
Mike, thank you so much for doing the show.
My pleasure, bro.
Brilliant to have you here, man. It's like, watched the gig last night. It was incredible.
Oh, thanks, man.
Really beautiful, and what a great band you've got with you.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we're here back in the live area. We do the podcast sometimes in the other part, but we thought today would be nice to have it down here.
Yeah.
But I thought you played fantastic. You know, your wife was amazing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I
Lainey's
love
got
that
such
she's in the band.
great time. You know?
Yeah. It's a good vibe.
Because you used to tour together back in the day, didn't you? You like
No,
that was a
we
rule,
didn't.
wasn't it?
We figured it's going to be too much, and she wanted to get her own career going on. I wanted that to happen for her too, because she's written so many great tunes, and then when we turned 70, we decided to tour together, and it's been great. I wish I'd done it earlier. I mean, it's working so great, and she sings beautifully. It just brings a whole different kind of thing to the
dynamic
band.
to it.
Yeah.
I think you look really beautiful together,
Yeah.
you know, as a couple. And I see the love and the energy. And don't get too corny here, but
no, but it's nice.
You can feel it, you know.
People are saying that a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of love there. You mean, you're kind of giving the benchmark about how you should be with a partner later.
Yeah, if you get lucky enough. I mean, I think there's a lot of luck involved when you meet somebody and it just works. And that's what happened with Leni.
And she's funny.
Yeah, she's great.
But a great musician. And, I mean, because I've read stuff about she toured a lot in Africa as well. So she kind of brings a lot of other influences into the house.
World music, yeah, totally. I mean, I steal some of her ideas all the time for my stuff. I definitely do. Yeah.
So when did you meet?
We met at Berkeley College. Well, I wasn't going there. I was in Boston, came back after playing with Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Mm-hmm. And I played in Boston with a bunch of jazz groups, and one kind of electric jazz group, kind of like what we're doing with a guy named Tiger Akoshi, and another group with the more straight-ahead jazz with Jerry Bergonzi. He's an amazing tenor saxophone player who lives in Boston. Incredible player. Both those guys were great, Tiger and Jerry. But and then I met Leni through Bill Frisell. And we were all like friends, and then she wanted to take some lessons, and like one thing led to another, and we just hit it off, you know, after a while. And
a few lessons, and then you got married.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the thing is, we were together for about 2 years, maybe a little bit less. No, about 2 years, and then she was going to get deported. She lost her student visa or something.
She's German.
She's German, so she's going to get deported. And I said, not so fast. And so let's get married and just have a prenuptial agreement. So in case it doesn't work out, we don't have to do. And then after about 5 years, it was working so good, I ripped up the prenuptial agreement and just said, you know, you got whatever's left over, you know. And so it's worked out great.
So you were born in Boston, right? But then I think you went to Washington. You grew up in Washington.
Grew up in D.C., yeah.
And your mum was a sculptor, is that right?
She was a sculptor, and she was an artist in general, and a good piano player. At one point, she wanted to be a professional, either teacher or actually performer for classical music. She was really good. But then she had a bunch of kids, so it took a little bit more time than, you got to do that all the time if you want to do, classical, really straight classical piano. It's got to take up all your time. So, but she still played beautifully. And that's how I kind of discovered her music. I mean, we grew up listening to a lot of classical music, but also she played some jazz. And then she had a lot of jazz records around the house. Right. And I used to learn when I first started playing guitar when I was 12 years old, I used to learn by just listening to records, basically. And there were rock records mostly, Beatles or the Stones or Hendrix, of course, and Jeff Beck and a bunch of different cats. And all blues players, especially blues, I was checking out. And in Washington, D.C., they played a lot of Motown on the soul music on the radio. That's all you ever heard. So I was totally into that too. And but just learning by ear, took about 2 lessons, and then I said, I still love to play, but I don't want to take lessons, So
sure.
The guitar just I got hooked right away and just loved it. But then I took some of my mom's jazz records up to my room to play along with those, and I got lost right away. And then I said, I want to learn how to play this music. It's great. And but it may take a minute, and then I started studying and learned how to read and all that stuff, and more scales and all. And went to Berklee College of Music in Boston. And
very famous for a lot of amazing musicians.
Yeah, that's a really good school. Really good school for
I think Al Di went there as well. Actually, we spoke to Al a few weeks back.
I met him there before he joined Chick Corea. We were friends in back in the day. Just met each other and played some before he joined Chick.
Yeah,
so he was a great cat. Yeah.
So in your family, you had brothers and sisters? You said so how many? Where were you and the brothers and sisters?
My older brother and then me. And then my sister Holly were all from the Sedgwick, my first father, my real father.
Right.
And his name was Sedgwick. That was my original name was Michael Sedgwick. On guitar, Michael Sedgwick on jazz guitar. But by the time I was about 5, he didn't want to. I think he wasn't doing so good, so he wanted, and my stepfather wanted to adopt us anyway. So it just happened, and with that, we didn't really get much of a say in it. But I probably would have gone along with whatever everybody wanted to do. So I didn't really see my real dad for about 20 years because he had another family.
Sure.
Which is a very cool family. Kira Sedgwick is my
actress. Yeah.
Actress. We have the same father. She had a different mom. That was my real dad's second family. And we're good friends. I mean, she's great. She's amazing. And her husband is Kevin Bacon.
Wow.
And he's really cool too. Really great. So and they've got also my stepfather and my mom had 2 more kids, David and Eve. So it's a family of 5 kids, and basically that I grew up with after.
And your older brother, did he bring music to the table? Because usually older brothers have an influence on you.
He was a drummer for a while, a rock drummer, and he was in a cool band called the Sidewinders. And then he kind of got into other stuff. He still plays a little bit, but he was just more, had some kids and did some other stuff, just doing different business kind of things, and did great. So, I love him dearly.
And your mom, was she very supportive of what you were?
Yeah. Except at one point, she was a little nervous about the extracurricular activities that I was involved in.
Over the
all
years.
That shit in those years, and it got pretty out. But then I got totally clean, and And that was, she really loved the fact that I was a musician, you know.
That's wonderful. Is she still with us, or she?
She passed a few years ago. She was 89.
Wow.
And my real dad was 95. So they lasted a long time.
Good for them. And you had good relationships with both of them.
Yeah, finally. My real dad, like I said, I didn't see him for 20 years, but then I really got close. He was great. And my stepfather, I got along with great. He was also great, you know, so. It's tricky when, you know, if it's a broken home and that kind of stuff. And in those days, they didn't deal with it particularly well. The thinking was that if you get adopted, you shouldn't see your real dad. You know, that's what shrinks were saying. The psychologist, psychiatrist. And that's changed 100% now. But, you know, you live and learn. Now, unfortunately, we were kind of caught in the back in those days when they thought. So I didn't see him for a while, but then when I started seeing him, it was amazing, because I hadn't seen my dad my real dad, and all of a sudden we're eating some food together, and he was talking kind of with the same phrasing that I do, or same kind of rhythm, and eating the same, you know, it was kind of blood is thick. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
If you can get to that point, you know, where, I never did with my dad, if I'm being honest. And like I was Irish, typical Irish family, you know, heavy drinker and smoker, and, you know, never got a compliment. I think the nicest thing he ever said to me was, "You're not as thick as you look." I think that was like
I think I got that from both my fathers, actually.
Yeah, it was about the nicest thing he ever said to me.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah. And,
it could be worse.
It could be worse. Well, there was worse, but we won't go into that. But
you don't want to go into that, yeah.
That's a whole other...
Yeah, that's
a whole other thing, you know?
Yeah,
I always kind of get slightly envious of people when I meet them, when they've had really good family relationships, you know, because I just didn't have that. But I suppose the upside is kind of if you use that energy to push you forward and to use the struggle as an energy, you know what I mean?
Totally.
It can help you. So
totally.
That's the silver lining.
The silver lining, which is strong. And a lot of people have that. You know, life is not easy for anybody, but some people have kind of more straight ahead family stuff, and they love their parents and everything goes basically smoothly. Some people. And a lot of people have edgy things going on, and like you, like me. And
definitely edgy.
But then you try to make peace with it somehow.
Yeah.
Otherwise it just stays in your craw.
It eats away at you, doesn't it? It just crawls around inside.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting on to your career, so your first big band was obviously Blood, Sweat and Tears.
Yeah.
And so how did that happen? Because they were kind of like 9 albums in or something at that point, when?
Yeah, they were a few, I guess, something like that. And it was actually, I was studying with Pat Metheny at Berkeley a little bit. He was there, he was about 12 years old. No, he was about 18. He was 2 years younger than me, and he was already teaching at Berkeley, playing his ass off. And he got a call from bobbycolomby, who was the founding father of Blood, Sweat and Tears and the original drummer for years, and they were looking for a guitar player. So I got an audition with them, and I thought, well, I'll go and audition. I'm sure I'm not going to get the gig. There was a lot of people vying for the gig, and I said, it'll be a great experience to just get the audition and meet those guys, and then I got the gig.
Wow.
Which really surprised me, but it was cool. So I went to Berkeley for 3 years, actually 1 year, and then took a year off, and then went to another couple of years. I think it was something like that. And then never finished, because then I was playing with Blood, Sweat and Tears. And that was a serious education, because all those guys were playing their asses off, and I was 22 years old. I was the kid in the band. And, but I grew up a lot playing with them, and just playing in front of that many people. You know, I'd done gigs with blues bands in DC and rock bands, but nothing like that. All of a sudden, you're playing in front of a few thousand people, and it's like, yike. But you get more used to it as you gain more experience.
But like it was very multi-genre as well, so you had to dig into a lot of different areas of your playing.
Totally, very much, and which is why I probably got the gig, because I could rock and do some bebop. Not so much bebop at that time, but I got into it much more, and those guys were teaching me all kinds of stuff. And I was totally into it. It just hadn't really knit in at that point because I hadn't been doing it for that long. And they were all a bit older than me, and had been playing in big bands and great small groups. The piano player played with Cannonball Adderley for a while. Wow. Actually, the drummer eventually, they changed from bobbycolomby. He did it for a while. Then Jacopastorius was in the band.
Amazing.
For about 3 months. And because Ron McClure, who was the original bass player, was smoking. I mean, he was not the original bass player, but they were changing, seats every so often, And Ron McClure had been there for a couple of years, and it was time for him to leave. He just felt like he wanted to leave, and then there was no bass player. bobbycolomby was already producing Jaco Pastorius' first record.
Right.
And he asked Jaco, and Jaco said, "Yeah, man, I'll do it for a couple months." And he did it for a couple months. And Spinning Wheel, which was one of their big hits, it never sounded so good, okay, with Jaco behind there. And but it was a really good band. And then later on, they changed drummers. Don Elias, who was a great percussionist with the band, also started playing drums. And then they got Roy McCurdy, who used to play with Cannonball Adderley for 15 years. Great jazz drummer, can play everything.
Sure.
And so all those people could play everything. They were mainly jazz players, but they could rock too. They had that. They could do all that. They could change up. They were eclectic, basically, but with their emphasis on jazz.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because I'd wager to say that you're like a jazz rock guitar player rather than just because there's a lot of rock in what you like. There's a lot of energy.
Yeah.
So, and I hear that, and obviously starting out with Blood, Sweat, and Tears because it's all over the place and it's amazing. But I don't. Also, I think again, my humble opinion is you're a very unselfish player. I listening to you last night, for instance, and going through all your repertoire over the years, a lot of due diligence involved in listening to everything you've ever done.
Wow.
It takes a bit of time. But it was like I felt what I really came clear to me was the way you play is very based around melody, and you leave the space, so you're always serving the song, you're always serving the music, you're not serving yourself. So you're not thinking, hey, I can sell something really cool. You're always thinking of the tune. Is that how you?
Yeah, I'm sure try. I'm so glad you hear that, because I try to do that, the best I can, and I think it's the best way to improvise is to use the. It's like if we're having a conversation, like we're having a conversation now, you want to keep it loose so you can kind of bounce off of each other when you're playing, but you want to stay within a certain kind of subject matter, which is the song. And if the song is exciting, you want to play some exciting stuff. If it's a sad song, you want to try to get that feeling in the solo that you're playing. And I think all the musicians that I've been lucky enough to play with in my band and else, not in my band, are very, very keen with that same kind of basic philosophy that you try to play the song throughout and kind of let the song guide you as far as what you play, what you don't play, and leaving space or playing more, depending on the tempo, depending on the feel.
Again, listening, and looking at your life, it's like you ended up leaving bands and going back to them a lot of the time, which meant they must have liked you, because some people fall out, they never go back.
Yeah.
But you didn't do that. You managed to kind of like leave bands, and join years later. You know what I mean? It's like, because usually just fallouts. I'll never work with that guy again. He's a nightmare.
Yeah.
But you seem to maintain all those relationships. So
yeah, I was lucky like that, and I like doing that. So, like with Miles,
Sure.
when I worked with Miles and I played, and I was getting so out in those days. They were drinking a whole lot and doing everything else under the sun. And Miles finally said, "Look, I got to let you go, man, and let me know when if you feel better, you can come back." And
Amazing.
And and then he called, his road manager called me, and they were looking for somebody else's name and number. I gave it to him, and I said, "By the way, I'm doing a lot better, so tell Miles I'd love to do the gig again." He called me right away. He said, "You got it."
Amazing.
So I played the gig for another 9 months, something like that. I'd already been there for about 2.5 to 3 years. There were breaks in that first band. It was with Marcus Miller on bass and Al Foster on drums, Bill Evans saxophone, and of course Miles and me and Mino Sinulu on percussion. When I first joined the band, Miles said, "We're going to go on the road." I said, "Wow, that sounds like fun, man." "Who's going to play keyboard?" He said, "No keyboard, just you."
Guitar. Shit.
And but that's what he wanted, a real lean sound. And he liked the way I was comping, playing chords behind him, and we jammed a lot. It was pretty open, very open, and that's the way Miles loved it.
But I think, again, going back to your playing style, like with Miles Davis, the way you play some chords and some of your technique, it is a bit like a piano player.
Yeah, I tried.
That little finger thing that you do,
Yeah.
And I just thought that's probably partly why he hired you. Hey, you don't have to pay for a piano player.
Yeah,
all those blanks,
maybe. He did like that, but he really wanted a lean sound, too. And because eventually he changed up and he got 2 keyboard players.
Yeah.
And that's the second band that I was in, which was great. Different, but great. And it was a great tenor saxophone player that was in that band. Also, we were really tight. Bob Berg was an incredible tenor player, and we ended up doing a group together. Bob Berg, Mike Stern band with dennischambers, and Lincoln Goines was playing bass. Originally, Jeff Andrews was playing bass. 2 great players, and of course Dennis. He's awesome. He's awesome.
One of the best ever.
Yeah, absolutely.
In my view.
Absolutely.
And just going back to Miles, because it wasn't Miles who helped you go into rehab and sort yourself out. I mean, if Miles Davis tells you he's free,
yeah, you got to jump.
You got difficult things to do.
Yeah. So he kind of urged me. I said, "Of course, I'm cool." Hey, Miles, that was old school. I mean, he knew I was getting crazy, but I kind of denied it. But eventually, the guy that helped me the most was Michael Brecker.
Wow,
because he had already gone through that. And a day at a time was sober, for years.
All right.
And he said, he was going to meetings and AA and that kind of stuff. And he said, "Come with me to one meeting." I didn't last half of it. I split. And then about 6 months later, I was ready to give that shit up. And I just called him, and he really helped me out big time.
Because I'm very good friends with Jack Bruce, and I've worked with him, and I've spoken to Jack about this because he had a, substance issue as well.
Yeah.
And we talked about this a few times, and, I kind of asked him, well, what was it about, heroin that you really enjoyed? He just said, "I just loved it." And also, for him, he said it was a little silly because I just wanted to be like my heroes, because he was really into jazz himself, Jack, and he took it up because, he just wanted to be like his heroes. Is that true to say for you as well? Why is it, especially in the jazz community, to become such a thing? Because we lost so many amazing players in jazz.
It's weird. I just think people are if you're any kind of artist, or you're a writer or a journalist, or a musician, or you're a painter, or you're a whatever, any kind of artist, you generally have a little bit more hypersensitivity, or just more sensitivity. And so sometimes that's hard to live with. It's a double-edged sword. You get it, and you can also, you want to kind of deaden it.
Right.
And you get into the deadening of it, and you maybe go a little too far, and which is what happens to a lot of people. And Jack was definitely, we talked about that a couple of times when I met him. Actually, one time I was still drinking. He had just stopped, but he joined me at the bar, and I remember at the end of it, we were singing White Room at the end of it, and we looked around, the bar had been packed when we got there, and no one was there. We were making so much fucking noise. But he was cool, and then the next day he said, you got me started again. But he was, it was very cool. But, that's kind of how that happens. And I think it happens to people that are kind of, it's not that's oversimplifying it, but usually people that get, drink too much or drug too much or trying to deaden some kind of hypersensitivity, which obviously is not good. It doesn't do much for the music. Some people think, did Charlie Parker do better with it? It got in his way. Big time, it got in his way. There's some tapes where he could not play, and it was like, introducing Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie playing for a radio show, right? And you hear Charlie just, and that's it. That's all you see, because he couldn't play. He just split. Right. Dizzy had to do it by himself. Somebody, whoever he was playing with, they just finished the gig. But so that stuff got in his way. He made the music despite all that, because the music was really strong in him. But less is more as far as that's concerned. If you can do, no drugs and just live with whatever the angst is that kind of sensitivity, which is the gift. If you can live with that difficulty of staying with that without anything to deaden it, you're doing much better off, so.
There's a red house over yonder. That's where my baby stays. There's a red house over yonder. That's where my baby stays. I haven't seen that little girl in 99 and 1/2 days.
And you mentioned Michael Brecker helped you out a lot. So that was when you joined his quintet, wasn't it, I think?
Yeah. He started his band, Michael Brecker Band, and that was with Jeff Andrews, we had already been playing a lot together, and Adam Nussbaum was playing drums, and originally Kenny Kirkland, who played with Sting, he went with Sting. Sure. While that band was going on, he said the Sting was offering a lot more bread, and
right, sure.
So he went with Sting. But it started off with Kenny Kirkland piano, and we were all tight, good friends. And then of course Michael, and who am I leaving out? Adam? No, that was it. And then Kenny left, and then Mike remembered this piano player that he met at a clinic named Joey Calderazzo, who was like 14 when he first met him. Wasn't much older when he joined the band, and Mike got him, and he just tore it up right away. He was just an amazing player, And so we toured with Joey Calderazzo, same band, but with Joey on keyboards, on piano.
Amazing.
And that was a great band, wonderful band. And then I played some of the Brecker brothers with Randy and Mike, and I still do gigs now with Randy. He plays with my band. Sometimes I play with his. He's incredible. Both those guys are just off the hook, the Brecker brothers.
I was watching you last night, and it was such a privilege to be here, and just obviously doing my due diligence for the podcast. It's like the huge breadth of work that you've done over your lifetime, with such amazing players.
Yeah.
It's just magical.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I'm not worthy kind of, I was just watching it, I've had a career in music myself, and just, it doesn't even touch the sides. I mean, just in any respect, like even, we didn't even mention Billy Cobham, and you worked with Billy as well.
That was great, man. What a badass.
Yeah, I mean,
Dennis
monster.
loved him. Dennis kind of took his just played. It had a lot of. Dennis has got his own thing, of course. Amazingly, he's like one of the greatest, as you said, ever. And but so is Billy, and they were. Dennis was definitely very inspired by Billy early on, and then Dennis found his own way, of course. But Billy was a badass and could swing his ass off as well as rock. So he was playing with the Grateful Dead, I think, from time to time, and playing with Brian Carter some swing, straight ahead stuff, and big band stuff from sometimes with Gil Evans Orchestra, and had his own band, and I played in his own band for, it must have been about a year, and it was great. That's who, Bill Evans, the saxophone player, actually brought Miles. He was helping Miles put the band together.
Right, okay.
And he got Marcus Miller. He recommended Marcus Miller, and Marcus got the gig. And he recommended me, and Bill brought Miles down to the Bottom Line. We were playing in New York at a club that's now gone, unfortunately, but it was very...
Is the Bottom Line gone now?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I used to go down myself back in the day.
It was great.
Yeah, love the Bottom Line.
Rock and jazz and whatever. All kinds of cool music, very eclectic, like a lot of those clubs were in those days. And so Miles came and heard me with Billy and really liked it. So I got the gig,
Did you feel he was misunderstood?
Who?
Miles?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, because I think he was...
Because he was grumpy and,
people thought he was grumpy, and he was always playing that for the interviews and all that stuff. But most of the time, he was very hypersensitive, I think, at the core. Extremely sensitive cat. And so some of that was just to guard against that.
Yeah.
That hypersensitive would be like tough guy, kind of. But no, so sometimes when we would talk, and he was seeing a therapist for a while, and he would tell me about that, and and he said the anxiety is a motherfucker when he was trying to get sober, which he kind of did. He had to take pain pills, unfortunately, because he got shot in his hip, or he had a hip. I think it was actually originally somebody shot him, but he had a hip transplant. It was always causing him some pain, but he stopped drinking. He stopped doing all the street stuff, and that was hard for him, And he used to tell me about it in a very straight-ahead way. And he also had an amazing sense of humor, and you couldn't pigeonhole Miles. I mean, it wasn't like he'd be talking some. Yeah, this and that kind of thing. And then Mary Tyler Moore was his favorite show. He got pissed off when they took it off.
I remember the Mary Tyler Moore show.
It was when they took it off. I love Ted Knight. He used to make him laugh all the time. And it was one of the stars on the show. And, he just had a very wide open personality. Kind of didn't, he didn't go. There was a lot of stuff on both sides where if sometimes Sonny Rollins, apparently Sonny got some shit for hiring Jim Hall, who was a white guitar player. And it worked unbelievably great. They made some classic records. And apparently, according to Jim, Sonny had to let him go after a while because he was getting so much shit about it happening. Miles never played that. He said, I don't care if you're white, black, whatever, if you can play the blues, he didn't care otherwise.
It was such a sad end, though, wasn't it? It was a very sad end for Miles,
Very. I mean, I think it was just, he just wore himself out early on, kind of, and died from something, liver complications. I'm not sure what he died. I don't think anybody really knows, but it was, he had a lot of life still with him. His nephew was Vince, who played with us. Vince Wilburn actually played in the band for a while, the second band that I was in. Really talented drummer, amazingly talented. And he was with Miles when Miles was almost gone. And he was at the hospital, and Miles said, I'm not ready to go yet. So he wanted to stay, and the body was telling him it's
So sad.
Yeah, it's really sad. But he left so much great stuff.
His music will be played in 1,000 years' time. We're still around. I was just thinking that this morning. I thought, like, Kind of Blue. I know it's the classic album,
Right.
but you know that's up there for me with Sgt. Pepper and Pet Sounds. You know,
Right.
that's a record will be played forever.
Yes.
It's one of the most sexy, beautiful records you're ever going to hear.
It's
you
really
know? And
true.
it's so beautifully crafted, that
Yeah.
record. But all his other music as well, Witch's Brew, and all the other stuff that he did over his career. It's like they can never take that away from him. He's one of the greats.
Yeah, absolutely great musicians of all time. He was actually getting paid from Columbia Records, whether or not he worked or not. When he had 7 years retirement, they still paid him. And the only other guy they did that to was Horowitz.
Wow.
Was the classical piano player, Horowitz. So, yeah, he was doing good. He was doing good. And yeah, I wish he'd been around for another 20 years, you know, but he died when he was 65. Same as my stepfather.
Wow.
Died at the same age.
Pretty terrifying, isn't it? Because actually, speaking of 65, your producer on your latest album just died, didn't he?
Yeah, that was really sad.
Bill Beard, isn't it?
Jimbeard.
Jimbeard, sorry.
An incredible musician and really good friend.
Young, so young.
And it was out of the blue. He was playing with Steely Dan. They were off the road because they started this tour, their final tour, I guess, or maybe they're still going to keep going. But Donald Fagen, they started a tour with the Eagles. So it was a big 2-year tour. And you know, so it was Eagles and Steely Dan. Then Donald Fagen got sick, but it was temporary, a few months later. So then they were working after we did the project, and it just happened when Jim was available very much so to work on this project with me because Donald Fagen got sick. But then he went on the road after the thing was done. He went on the road with Steely Dan, and then the next I heard from him was a text saying, "Hey, Mike, how are you doing?" kind of. So I called him back thinking he's probably calling from someplace playing with Steely Dan. And he said, "I'm in the hospital with cancer."
Oh, God.
And it's just, it broke my heart. I mean, and then the problem was, as often happens, unfortunately, is that it wasn't the cancer that killed him. They had to do some kind of thing.
Procedure,
And he got sepsis from that. And that happens, you know, there's so much infection in hospitals, so. And it's very easy to get, apparently, and they couldn't turn it around. They gave him tons of antibiotics, and it was just, organs were just failing.
Well, the album sounds great.
Yeah, and Jim was badass. And he was going through some other shit at the time. His back went out and, you know, normal. And he was still killing it, you know. And yeah, it's called Echoes and Other Songs. I'm so glad you like it.
Yeah, it's great. I listened to it this morning before
Awesome,
I came. It's fantastic. Beautifully mixed as well. The mixes are great. I mean, the playing is amazing. And
Great, man.
And it was kind of, I was looking at I know we were talking about analog, and I was looking at your Spotify page, and I think it's nice to see that your most popular albums are your first 2 albums and your last 2 albums you've just done.
Good, yeah.
You know, okay, they're missing the bit, but that's quite good. You know, the
That's
first 2
good,
and
yeah.
the latest 2, you know, are your most popular records. And,
that's good.
And rightly so, they're all amazing records. And going back to your first album, I mean, you know, your first solo album, I mean, you had such an amazing band with that. I mean, you got Jaco, and you had David Sanborn and Bob Berg and Dave Weckl.
Steve Jordan played on that thing with Jaco. The 2 of them, wow, what a hookup. Woo!
I mean, that is just, I mean, you must have been beside yourself.
Yeah, I was really happy with it, but I was a nervous wreck, as I always am, with records especially. It's just so hard to make a record.
Sure.
And you think, oh, then you got to mix it, and then you start second guessing as you listen back and think, should I put an overdub here, fix this there? You know, you have to let a lot of stuff go. And Jim was actually, when I finally started working with him, Hiram Bullock actually produced the Upside Downside record. Right. And the second one was
That's your first
Time and Place.
album.
And that was, and Time and Place was the second one. That was Steve Kahn produced that. And then the following one, I think he did also. But then I hooked up with Jim when I was doing a record called Odds or Evens. And Jim just made everything better. I mean, those guys were great as producers also, but Jim just had a thing. First of all, a keyboard player. The other two, Hiram and Steve Kahn, are both guitar players. Keyboard player would really helped in terms of, finding the right voicings.
Sure.
And I could talk to him about it and say, that's not exactly right. I'm hearing something more like this. And I'd play part of it on the guitar, and then he'd fill it in. And then he had tons of his own ideas, but he never pushed them. He just let the music kind of find itself, and occasionally he'd make really cool suggestions, but no pushing. He was an amazing cat to work with, and he could do everything. I mean, he could just, he did, he was great at technical stuff, and could make any record sound good somehow, just the way he produced it. But he liked my music, so we kept working together, and for a bunch of projects, including the last one. And then he was gone, and I'm still reeling from that. I just,
I know. There's someone.
I keep wanting to call him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've got friends like that too. It's awful, and they're just gone.
Yeah,
it's kind of hard to get your head around it in a way.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
And you toured with Jaco as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
How was that? I mean, he's
Great.
One of the, again, greatest bass players of all time.
Yeah, he was amazing. And the first time I heard him, I went down to hang in Florida from Washington, D.C. We actually drove down there. It was really hot. I remember the car didn't have air conditioning. We were like sweating our asses off. But we drove down to Florida. We were hanging out, and we went to this bar. It was kind of like a disco, actually, or kind of a rock club.
Sure.
Or both, But in this night, it was a rock band playing, and then somebody got up. It was called the Flying Machine, a place in Florida. And somebody got up halfway through. Everybody was talking, and they were playing instrumental stuff. It was a piano player on a Fender Rhodes, really good drummer, and a bass player that I went, holy fuck, who's that? And I went up to him after, and he was playing his ass off. And it was more of a rock audience, so they weren't really digging it, I mean, they were, but not really, They're not like, it wasn't as loud as the other band. It wasn't, that's what they were there to hear. And then, but I went up to Jaco afterwards, and I said, man, you are amazing. I'm going to Berkeley soon. And, I told him all that stuff. And then I heard him about 3 years later. I was in Boston. He was playing in a little club with Pat Metheny. It was before they did that record.
Right.
The first Pat Metheny record. And Jaco and Bob Moses was the drummer. And they were playing there, and Pat said, you got to hear this bass player. I didn't, I went, like I said, I was studying with Pat, so he said, come down to the gig, and you got to check this cat out. I went to this little club, the Zircon, they were playing, and it was the same bass player, it was Jaco. And I went up to him, and I said, man, you sound amazing. He said, I remember you, man, the Flying Machine, 4 years ago, whatever. He had this amazing memory.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing. Because I just met him so on the fly in the middle of that club in Florida. And anyway, we hooked up later when I joined Blood, Sweat, and Tears, because he played with Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And then after Miles, he called me to do some touring with his band. So we ended up playing. And we used to practice together all the time.
Really?
We'd come up to New York, and we'd just play all the time. And we had plenty of help keep us up all night playing. But it was, it was a great group.
Yeah, he's got so much love. I mean, when we interviewed we talked to Al Di Meola about him as well. He loved him, But and again, just such a terrible, sad end,
Yeah, that was really terrible, because that was unforced. You know what I mean? It was
crazy
an
bouncer,
It was just because he was just got too fucked up, and really brought himself to that end, because he insulted some cat that was a karate expert, and he probably told him some stuff that was actually a joke. Jaco used to do that and then pull it back with another comment, but the guy didn't wait for the punchline. He gave him the punch. He just knocked him out. And then there's a weird end to the story, which I've heard since. I don't know if it's true, is that some cops came to the scene. He started insulting them. They took him in the back.
Hitting and kicking.
And finished it, just kicked his ass a little bit more. And then he went into a coma and never came out.
Oh, God, it's the saddest thing ever.
Yeah.
And you obviously had in 2016, you had a fall. And just speaking of accidents,
yes,
hurt your hand, and you had to redevelop your whole playing technique.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there's enough there that sounds. No one can tell the difference, which is amazing, except for me.
Yeah, I couldn't hear the difference last night.
It's a challenge, It's a challenge, but yeah, I'm grateful that I got to this point, because at first I thought I won't be able to play again. At first, my hands were perfect. I went to the hospital. And they sent me to the wrong doctor. They sent me not to a hand and arm specialist, but to just a trauma, thinking my hands will be fine. But 2 or 3 days later, this nerve damage started settling in from all the way from these bones were broken, the humerus bones. This was clean, and this was kind of jammed up, more broken in a few places. So that caused this problem. It's not common, but it's not impossible for this to happen. So the nerve damage worked its way all the way to my hand, and I finally found a hand and arm specialist named Dr. Alton Barron, who's amazing. He works with, he's done stuff with Bruce Springsteen and Keith Richards and a bunch of people, different things.
Right.
And just anybody, just people that are not usually musicians, though, because he's a guitarist himself, so he's got a really good name. So violinists go to him from the New York Philharmonic, that kind of thing, if they have carpal tunnel or
syndrome.
And he really helped me out. But he's told me that had they called him or somebody like him, they probably would have done the surgery right away instead of waiting 5 days for the swelling to go down.
Right.
Because there would be maybe a chance that this could happen. And I told the other doctor, the guy that they originally had me go to, that something was weird happening to my hand, and he just didn't take it seriously until I was in the operating room ready to sign myself in. And I said, as I've been telling you, Doc, I can't sign myself in. I can't move my hand. I couldn't do this. I couldn't get from here to here with my thumb and index finger. Now, I can, because they did all these rewiring, to put it in a simpler way. But it's different. It's called tendon transfers, where they take healthy tendons and transfer them. So that's what Dr. Barron eventually did. But had he known about it, or a hand and arm specialist, they might have done the surgery earlier, and a good chance that this would never have happened.
Wow.
So, because in the beginning, it was, hands were normal. I didn't fall on my hands. I fell like this. So the fall, the impact came from here and went up here and broke these bones, not my hands. So my hands were good in the emergency room. It happened a few days later. And had somebody known what could have happened with this nerve damage, an expert, it would have changed maybe the situation. Anyway, I learned a way to play, and I still have to use glue to put the, I use wig glue. Donald Trump's original wig glue. Because it's really sticky, and it doesn't hurt your fingers at all. Anything else, I was thinking Gorilla Glue or something that'll take your skin off.
Sure.
But this stuff, obviously, people use it on their head. So it won't take your skin off, but it's really sticky, so it works. And,
amazing. So you found the way.
That's the only way I could. I've got enough strength here, but somehow I need a little assistance, just keeping the pick in the hand. I used to play more with my fingers, and I can't do that anymore. With this hand, I used to do some little classical stuff and that kind of stuff. Not too much, but I used to love to do it. I can still do it with a pick some. So you just keep going. Where there's a will, there's a way, as they say.
Absolutely. I'm speaking with Dennis earlier on about, when he had his health issues and nearly died. It's like, it's just,
I found him.
He said you saved his life.
Yeah. Well, I was just there at the right time. I think ultimately he saved his life because he had so much.
That's not what he says, dude. You have to take the credit.
Yeah, well, I appreciate
because he said Mike Stern saved my life.
Yeah, well, I sure
quote
appreciate
end quote.
it.
You know.
Yeah.
So
I sure appreciate that. But I saw him. I found him at the right time because it had been we had a late sound check and everybody else said just let him sleep. And I noticed that he was not looking good, but still playing great.
Yeah.
So fucking unbelievable. But not looking good. He just has so much life force in him.
Power.
And and just wants to keep going. And when I found him, it was a mess. But we got him to a hospital, and then the doc said 50-50, but I thought he's going to come through. I just felt it. I just really felt it strongly because I said, this doc does not know Dennis Chambers.
He ain't going nowhere.
He's not going to go. He ain't ready yet. So, but thank God that happened. Yeah. So, yeah. But I'm glad I was, went in, banged on his door, and kind of forced it. I had to yell at the receptionist because he had a do not disturb sign on his door. I had to yell at the receptionist to open the door. So,
when did you originally meet Dennis?
That was years ago, man. We've been playing 40 years together, something like that. I guess something like that, yeah, because I was 30-something when I met him. And we ended up playing a lot of gigs with Bob Berg and with that band with a great tenor saxophone player. Another very sad story. He was totally sober. He had his own thing with that. Got totally sober, straight, had 2 beautiful kids, and had to drive into the city on a terrible weather day, and a cement truck jackknifed.
Oh my God.
And he died. And his wife was thrown from the car, and she's still alive. She's doing okay, But we lost him too, and it was like, oh my God, When things like that happen, as we all know, for whatever reason, when a friend of yours dies young, or before his time, it's bad enough when they go, at an old age, but when they die before they're supposed to, it's right.
Yeah, and they really don't want to.
It's tough. Yeah, exactly.
So you've got the new record out, Echoes and Other Songs, again, which I said earlier on, I think is a brilliant record.
Oh, thanks.
And again, going back to the gig last night, like the time was amazing. It reminded me of, I worked with Ginger Baker, not trying to brag here, drop names, but
yeah, it's cool.
He was always,
did you know him?
Yes, of course. Well, I knew Jack, of course, and I met him.
He was a cool guy. I didn't know Jack very well, but just a couple times I met him, I just right away dug him.
He was the most beautiful guy. He was one of my best friends.
Wow.
And I miss him terribly.
Yeah.
And when Jack died, it was really, I'm Irish, we like to be a little tough about stuff. And I remember, I heard that, he died because I was on my way out to his house to see him, and then Margaret, his wife, rang and said, "He's gone, Rob, don't come out." And I was just like,
oh,
it was awful.
Shit.
And I was in Abbey Road at the time, and I went back to the studio, and there's a woman there who's one of the fixers for the orchestra, and Isabel Griffiths, really lovely lady, and she knew Jack from years ago, and she fixes all the big sessions for all the big Hollywood directors and all that. And she said, "Are you okay? You look a bit sort of, you don't look yourself." And I was like, and then I just burst out crying.
I don't blame you.
It just came out of nowhere,
Yeah, of course.
It was just horrible. And
how old was he?
He was only 72, I think. And
what a badass, though. I mean, he left such great stuff. And he worked with Carla Bley.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I worked with Ginger just before he died. Wow. I did a Cream acoustic record, and we had Joe Bonamassa on it, and we had Ginger on it, and a lot of other people. We had Pee Wee Ellis as well from James Brown's band.
Acoustic? What do you mean?
We were using acoustic guitars, drums, no real electric instruments, so it was Cream songs done acoustically.
That's very cool. I never heard that.
And we had Ginger on drums, but Ginger was funny, man, because we came into the studio, of course, being Ginger, and he was like, what? I said, so Ginger, do you want to go through the song? I just fucking 1, 2, 3, let's go. And I'm like, all right, man, if you say so. So everyone had rehearsed for 2 days, ready for Ginger, and Joe Bonamassa was prepared. Bernie Morrison from Whitesnake was there, and Neil Murray from Deep Purple. Everyone was ready.
Wow.
And he just gets behind the kids, and And it was terrible. In the middle, everyone stopped and just stared at me because I was producing. I just wanted to run out of the building. And then it was like, but the sad thing was we were walking away and then he just sort of said to me, he said, I can't play anymore, Rob. And it kind of broke my heart, you know. It was like it was like he had all this, you know, this bluster, but it was all for show, really. Deep down, he knew it kind of his best days were over, and he needed the money because, you know, Ginger being Ginger, and the way he bought houses and
of course.
He bought horses. I think was his big thing, and lost a lot of money. And but the history between him and Ginger's a whole other story. I mean, he told me about, Ginger and him had a fight in front of 20,000 people where Ginger, he accused Jack of playing bass notes while he was doing a solo, jumped off the kit, punched Jack in the face, right?
Oh,
just in front of 20,000 people.
Sounds like the Academy Awards a couple of years ago.
And then he goes down, and then he pulls a knife on him. I mean, it's a true story. I got loads of, it's not...
That's like Dizzy Gillespie did that to Cab Calloway, apparently. Cut his ass or something from what I heard. But anyway, I mean, that's wild.
They were wild, the pair of them.
But ended up good friends? Or
Yeah. I mean, he cared about him in the end. I mean, even, I think... Jack lent him money in the end. I might get pulled up for that, but that's what Jack told me.
Yeah.
I mean, Jack had so many stories. I mean, have you ever heard of the Kray brothers? They were this kind of crime family in London.
Oh, yeah.
So Jack, famous, there's movies made about them, the Kray brothers, and they were big Cream fans, and especially one of them was a big Jack fan. And basically, they were convicted of murder and put in prison. And they actually, Jack told me, he's never told anyone else, he said they actually got... they smuggled one of the Krays out of prison to have dinner with Jack and smuggled them back in again.
Oh, shit.
True story. Jack wouldn't lie to me, man.
No, I bet you that's true. That sounds...
Anyway, he was just the most beautiful person. I mean, it was amazing that Dennis played with him.
Yeah.
And with Andy Summers on guitar. I mean, it never was released. But there are recordings somewhere where they recorded it, haven't been mixed. And I'll have to tell Margaret, his wife, when I see her. But like we lost Jack too early. He was so supportive and wonderful, and we laughed all the time.
Oh, that's great.
It's
so terrible. You know, I remember Anthony Jackson. I was playing with Anthony, and one of the things he was telling me all these stories, this and that, because he played with so many people. Great bass player. Mm-hmm. But one time he was at a festival, and Jack was playing at the same festival somehow. But Anthony was, at one table eating breakfast and talking pretty loud. And he said, Jack, and some of the playing he did is some of my favorite playing. And Anthony Jackson's on all these soul records and on the Chaka Khan records, and he's made 3,000 recordings. He was an amazing bass player. And he was talking all this really good stuff about Jack, and Jack was at the next table. He said, and I think he was very flattered,
Yeah, well, Jack was very humble. He's from working class roots. I mean, he lived in tenements in Glasgow,
Wow.
It's a whole thing, He was a tough Scot, but he had a heart of gold, and, but he had his issues like everybody does, but the love was there.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I felt it just for hanging with him just a couple nights, and he was a great cat. And I was such a fan, I thought Cream, I still think they're amazing.
Yeah,
amazing band.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And, well, your band, tonight you're playing at the Jazz Dock, I think.
Yeah.
Have you played there before?
No, maybe. I might have, but I'm not sure.
It's like a glass building on the river. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
It's a bit strange. They've got no backstage area, but
that's all right.
Just play the set and then leave, but it's amazing. You're looking out at the river and it's gorgeous. You'll have a lot of fun there, and it's quite beautiful little venue. And then touring, Dennis was saying you're touring then till the end of November, is it? Or?
Pretty much. Not quite, but I'm going to, me and my wife are playing in Finland with some badass musicians that are friends of ours, really great. Like the best cats in Finland, but they're best cats almost anywhere, really amazing. And so we're going to be here till the 20th. I think this tour stops a few days before, but then we're doing a bunch of stuff next year already. We're going to Australia, and then we're going to Brazil, and then we're going to Japan, and then we're going hopefully to China again. I think we are next year, so and Europe.
Amazing. So busy as ever.
Yeah,
It just continues.
I want to keep playing, and Leni loves it. She wants to play all the time. So,
as I said, you two together are so sweet. It's so beautiful to see you together, and you know, and that energy. It's just a really wonderful, positive thing.
Oh, thanks for saying that. Yeah, I feel the same, very much the same way.
On a nerdy note, I heard you talking about SPX 90s. Everyone else is going to go roll their eyes now, but. That's the pitch change C, I think, isn't it? On the fine. Yeah. I used to use that for vocals all the time. It was my trick. It was like my hidden thing. How'd you get that vocal sound? Yeah. And it was like the same preset that you use it.
For me, it makes...
The Yamaha SPX 90.
Yeah, and it makes the guitars just sound... I'm using a Tele style, you know, and... Some people use two guitars. If they're playing a jazz thing, sure. But I like to switch mid... You know, I want it to sound kind of smoother and a little fuller sounding. And so I use that, and more vocal sounding especially. I'm looking for a vocal sound on the guitar, like a horn I transcribe a lot of horn players and try to play some of those lines on the guitar, right?
Yeah, sure.
And I want to have that kind of vocal sound. So that effect that's why I use that, and 2 amps. So it doesn't hit you, it beam you right in front, as sometimes
spreads it out.
Yeah, it spreads out a little bit, and like a horn. When you hear a horn, the bell, it comes out of the bell and goes everywhere. So that's why I use that. It's old, something that you can barely find anymore.
They have one called the Rex 50, the REX 50, Yamaha REX 50. Right. Does exactly the same thing. It's got that preset on it, and it's really light and it's tiny. Yeah. You ever need to take it on the road, the Rex 50. I have one actually. If you want it,
I have one now, and I tried it, and it's very close. It's almost the same thing, and. Alan Holsworth used to use 3 of them. Somebody told me at once. So I don't know. Weird.
And speaking of vocals, you should sing some. I think you're a brilliant vocalist. I heard you sing on Wishing Well. I think I heard you singing, and it was
and then Red House at the end. You know?
Yeah, I mean, why don't you sing more?
I want to do more. It's hard to do, man. Leni, my wife sings and warms up, and she's got a vocal coach that's every so often they get together. But I don't do that, and man, sometimes your voice just goes. The guy that kind of prompted me to try it in the first place and I was kind of shy about it, but was Richard Bona, who's also on my record. There's an amazing African singer and bass player, incredible. He's playing, he's on tour all the time, and we're going to be doing some gigs with him in Japan in March, but he knows how to pace himself. They're like professional singers. So if I do it, I got to get a little bit more serious about it, because your voice goes.
Tell me about it.
It dries up, and all of a sudden, you can't do shit. It sounds like
I'm from a singing background, and I know all about that.
Yeah,
it's horrible. So, it's because in your playing style, you often you can sing the melodies. I mean, I think you often, when you've done sort of lessons, you encourage people to kind of mumble and sing what you're playing on the guitar.
You don't have to be an opera singer to do it. You just kind of more or less get the notes, but it makes you, especially on guitar, it makes you phrase more lyrically a lot of times, or more melodically, and sound more like what you really want. I think everybody tries to sound human when they're playing, in some ways, as much as possible. At least a lot of people do. And like you're singing, vocalizing. So, and that, obviously, if you sing along, that even under your breath, not to necessarily be with a microphone, but when you're learning, and it really helps you figure out the guitar, and figure out where the notes are. Guitar is weird. It's like a maze. Mm-hmm. Piano is incredibly logical. The octave here, it's the same. Guitar is just not logical at all. We can do this, thank God. But it's tricky to navigate and find the right pitch. I'm teaching sometimes to play on single strings instead of up and down the neck, instead of in position. But you need both.
Right.
But to it's more intuitive when you play on separate strings. So sometimes I say practice scales in position and up and down the neck on each string, that kind of stuff. But singing really helps, I think.
Well, I think you should sing more.
Oh, thanks.
You got a terrific voice. And,
appreciate it, bro.
It's got this nice bottom end and this kind of sort of huskiness to it.
Yeah, great. Yeah,
man's voice. You know, you sound like a bloke, which I like that kind of voice. You know, you're a guy singer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not all sweet. I mean, I heard you singing last night and doing some of the, you know, on the new records that you've done some of that sort of awing and oohing on it as well, which is brilliant. That new album is just so sort of delicate, but also has those powerful moments. And I thought that was great about the show last night. You know, the way, again, to Uckamit, you and Dennis and the other guys you've got playing with, just fantastic, great bass player.
Yeah, Chris Mindoki's a badass.
And the sax player is amazing.
Yeah, Bob Franceschini, incredible cats, man.
And they know how to dig in.
I'm lucky to be in the band as far as, and they really do,
No, it was an amazing show.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you go because you've got to go and do your sound check and all the rest of it. But just before you go, could you play us something on the guitar, anything?
I'll just riff a little bit.
Just give us anything just to finish off the show.
I'm going to try this guitar because somebody told me Jimmy Page played.
This was Jimmy Page's guitar, absolutely.
Did he play
Stairway to Heaven
in this?
Yes, he did, apparently. So,
No.
legend has it.
Did he?
Yeah.
I don't know Stairway to Heaven, so I'll just riff. I'll just play it. Do you know it, Blas?
Every
I'd see you got to use this technique. It's a little weird to play this.
It's kind of diminished triads, yes?
Yeah, well, diminished would be this. Like over that maybe note, or over E. Don't take this playing too seriously. I'm just roughing it off with this new guitar, but I can't refuse the opportunity to play something that Jimmy Page played.
You know, Gary Moore once said, like, if you can pass by a guitar without picking it up, maybe the guitar's not for you. And I can go along with that.
Yeah, but this is a nice one. Diminished would be.
Thank you so much, Mike.
All right, brother.
Thank you for doing the podcast, Mike.
Thank you, man. My
Huge
pleasure.
fan and
my
best
pleasure.
of luck with everything.
Thanks, man.
You deserve it.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate it.
It's a wrap. I think we're good. Thanks for your time.
That was a fun podcast, man. You're amazing at this.
Hello.